Welcome back to the Info Diet Podcast with Michael Guimarin. I'm Michael. Today I'm joined by Ed Latimore, who is a writer, former boxer, physicist. I believe you have a degree in physics. And Ed is a prolific person on the internet, on Twitter. You can find him at edlatimore.com or at edlatimore on Twitter. And he has a newsletter, which I recommend signing up for. Ed, did I do okay on your bio there?
Yeah, that's great, man. You know what's crazy? I don't even know my bio anymore, man. Like I'll go on the show and someone will say, well, they'll either tell me to introduce myself and then they'll go, "Oh, you forgot this." I'm like, "Shit, I did." Or or they'll give me a bio and I'll hear it. I'm like, "That is right. That did happen." Perfect.
Well, there's this thing where we're supposed to improve, every few years, right? You do a new chapter of your life. And so you have these different chapters. And what's great about your online presence is that you keep looking back to them, right? So you've made your jokes about crackheads. You've made your jokes about, your insight and wisdom about boxing. And then, of course, you have the that academic side where you went back to school to grab a physics degree. So you have sort of all of the components. It's pretty awesome. And of course, you're a prolific writer, and so you're a good, clear thinker as well.
I certainly try to be. That's the real benefit of writing, that it makes me smart.
Yeah. Well, so the topic of the podcast relates to the information environment, right? So as a prolific curator, as an influencer, and apologies if you don't like that title, but basically a lot of information comes to you as a function of the fact that you're on the internet, and you somehow process that information and then either use it to connect to your fans and broadcast to the world. And so what I'm interested in learning today is sort of what insights or rules that you've come up with to help you to evaluate this information, because most of us, when we're on the internet, we're overwhelmed with just stuff, right? Like there's this story that is actually apocryphal, but I think is directionally accurate, which is that the amount of information in a week's worth of newspapers today is the same as someone was likely to come across in their entire life in the 18th and previous century. So the amount of information, let alone disinformation, is so great that we're all overwhelmed. And I'd love to hear more about how you, Ed Latimore, deal with that problem.
Okay, so this is great. A really, really great question. I guess I attack it from two angles. The first is willful ignorance. I go out of my way to not know a lot of stuff. I'll be the first person to tell you that being what do they call, well informed is overrated, because I'm very big on, what can I do with this information? Okay, and if I can't do something with it, then what is it what is it doing in my head? There's a great episode of Sherlock, the one with Benedict Cumberbatch, and they're trying to solve this puzzle about a painting, and Sherlock doesn't know like the name of the planet closest to Earth, or the next one is Mars, and like Watson is giving him crap about it, and he's like, "Why would I need to know that? Like, how does that help me solve a problem in my life?" And it's a bit of an exaggeration, but that's just because we consider that kind of like common knowledge. But I take that same approach to a lot of things. If I can't do anything with it, I don't think about it. I try to keep it away. Now, with that said, if something makes a big enough noise, I can't ignore it. If it's relevant kind of to the people who are my family or network, I can't ignore it either. Like, I live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. A hurricane going to hit me, but I have family in Sarasota, Florida. So I've been tracking the hurricane. So, that's important to me. So that's the one angle. I reduce my inputs to what is relevant to me making decisions. The other thing is, I have a because of what I studied, physics, and how much math we had to take. I mean, I think I took every math class you can take under the 400 level. and then I continue to read and sharpen my mind on other things related to mathematics and quantitative reasoning, is that combined with the need to be willfully ignorant and understanding the power of words from writing, I don't get sucked in the headlines. I take one look at a headline or the way a story is presented, and I immediately know that I should be asking what question I should be asking. You know, I have a tweet about this where I say, you know, if they give the average, ask for the median. Where they give the median, ask for the average. And if they give you the change in rate, like the percentage, ask for the initial quantity. And if you, and I don't remember how I said it, it was poetic. And and then I said, like, and if they give you all three, they might be true, but you still might need to see the variance and standard deviation to truly believe. And thinking like that, and I understand that's a very different way to think about this stuff. And it's hard too, because you have to know that you're looking at, you know, you're dealing with people who understand loss aversion bias and how to hook you in, and the profit model of CPM, cost per mil of impression. All of this, right? It's very profitable just to keep you there clicking.
Yeah.
Once you know that, combined with having the tools to suss out information that's being presented to you, and then you're good. And then I'm real big on, like, you got to walk a fine line, because I've learned enough now, especially digging into nutrition. I've learned enough to know that even the trusted sources can't really be trusted, and that's a shame. And that like I was not a conspiracy theory bro. In fact, I've always said
you're not a
I've
conspiracy
always
theorist.
okay. I've always said that a lot of stuff that looks like conspiracy is just emergent behavior or are really coincidence, and our brains don't like that, so we try to find a pattern. And I
Called the
still
base rate
believe that,
fallacy.
huh?
I think it's called the base rate fallacy, just looking for
Right.
patterns in random data.
Yeah, there's a great little test. You know, you show somebody four pictures of the distribution of lights on a background. You call them stars, whatever, and ask which one is random. And most people will look at the one that is evenly distributed across and think it's random, unless you have, like, you understand what random means, and you pick the one with like a big clumps all over the place, and you go, well, that one must be random, and it's sort of deal. But like once you see all that, and you know these, you know, we want a pattern. I got hip to this idea, and it made me really distrustful of the news now, like, to a much higher degree, when I learned about all of the experiments we have to show that saturated fat does not contribute to heart disease or cholesterol. And we have it. If you ask the average person that, even a doctor, they're going to give you, most doctors are going to give you kickback. I'm like, no. I have this. You hear the studies. I can show you, like, the real, like, National Institute of Health, peer-reviewed journal studies that show, right, so there's no evidence linking the two, but we treat that like gospel.
Yeah.
And it's infiltrated all levels. So once I saw that, I was like, okay. So now I got to question even the official sources of things. And what really helps, I think, is having an education in physics, because physics is really about the first principles of the world. I mean, physics is short for physical science. Once you, if you have those, it becomes really hard to trick you. You, or at the very least, you understand what questions to ask about any given problem.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I think your background in math allows you, I think, a leg up on most people. You know, when I think, and I think this happens a lot in health. And so I'm curious if health was sort of your red pill moment, if you will, on the fact that sort of everything is broken. Your background in math allows you to see a study and to ask, okay, let's look at the methods and let's look at the way they're framing this, and let's talk about who benefits, who was paying for it. And then to ask, like, okay, well, you know, they gave us the average, right? But what is that? What's the distribution look like, right? So that would be like, you know, on a number line, right, or in an array. And I think that's really helpful. And I like that. You know, one of the things that I've said before and I love the way that you put it in the beginning, was about focus, right? Which is, I don't consume information that's not going to change my, anything about my environment that I can't affect, right? I say, like, if you're taking an action and the information's not going to change that action that you're taking, you should discard it, right? So I don't really care who's winning in the Wisconsin, whatever political race, because I don't live in Wisconsin, right? You live in Pittsburgh, and you said, well, sometimes I carve out, Hurricane Irma is coming to Florida because I got family there. That makes a lot of sense to me, right? Like, you want to have empathy with that. But that first pass filter of, someone's talking about a grain silo blowing up in Lebanon, that's not really going to affect me. So it's great where they could speculate, was it this guy's, was it those guys, that kind of thing. But, that first pass is really good. And then using, like you said in your second pass, which is your experience and your knowledge, your understanding of physics and first principles thinking to, get to the truth of things. I think what's amazing, and I just had somebody on that talked about this as well with the saturated fats, is it's not even just that saturated fats don't have a link to heart disease. It's that cholesterol itself and the whole lipid hypothesis,
right?
It's all falling apart, and it's the standard of care, right? You're like,
and
well,
go ahead. It's so, and this is like one of the things I go into these phases where I get fired up about things, and I try to learn as much as I can. And I was telling Anna, I was like, when you're not driving with me, the radio was either something about the cholesterol myth or insulin and how it plays a role, or I'm listening and practicing Spanish. It's one or the other, but it's really turned into, health. Once you realize what works, right, versus what is promoted, and then and not just promoted, because I get the business side of the hustle, right? But then when you realize what the government is complicit in promoting, you start to lose so much faith in the idea that the government is here to serve the people, or that even experts know what they're talking about. I had a thread. I put a thread out about how I've lowered my hemoglobin A1C and boosted my vitamin D and got my testosterone levels up, all without injections or anything like that. And someone asked me, it was like, well, how do you, what do you do if you have a doctor that is like trying to force you one way or the other? And I'm like, you got to understand, the only difference between me and a physician is that a physician went to school longer. They may be a little smarter because the way medical school admissions work, they self-select out people who aren't going to go through organic chemistry, calculus, whatever.
Dude, you're smart. You're a smart guy. If you look at your background and you got a physics degree and now you're talking about
health, what I mean in general, when I say, the difference, what I mean is in general. But the point I was raising to him was, I was like, knowledge is decentralized now. You can go, if you really care, you could go learn whatever you want to learn. Now, to practice surgery, I want you to, be under the guise of more experience. But in terms of educating yourself about what works, what doesn't work, you can go learn a lot. Unfortunately, thank goodness, there are real thinkers even in those ranks. And so a lot of the information I get, when people decide to contradict it, I'm like, well, not only do I have it from research study, but the people telling me that these are doctors with their podcasts. There's so many doctors with shows, and they talk about what works in their practice and what doesn't. And it's amazing. Like, the food pyramid is a recipe for it's a recipe for a lot of health problems. Low fat. Whenever I'm walking to the store and I see low fat, I go, it's a crime they're allowed to sell this. Like, why would you have low fat cheese? That's like the point of cheese.
Yeah. Oh, you're preaching to the choir, brother. It's like the thing that was one of the things I talk about is that, first of all, a lot of people become very despondent and upset when they realize that it's not just the industry they're most familiar with that has structural problems, but it's everywhere, right? So it's like a version of what's called the gel man amnesia effect, right? So if you're a doctor, you see, okay, medicine is really messed up, but media can't possibly be messed up. And then you realize, oh wait, media is totally messed up. And then it's, okay, literally everything is messed up. What are we supposed to do? Right. But then you provide the solution, which is there are subject matter experts who have participatory knowledge, right? So that would be like the doctor who's done surgery, who will talk about, this is what I'm seeing in my practice. And instead of being a sort of Anthony Fauci-like figure where they're lecturing you on reality, they're just presenting their experience so that you can evaluate it against your body of knowledge. It's like the difference between, a broadcast professor and a coach, right? You can have someone that's lecturing you on nutrition, or you can have a nutrition coach. And it's really like how much responsibility you personally take. And as someone who is, centered in who they are as a person, you've obviously taken a huge amount of responsibility for everything that goes on around you. And so, and that includes evaluating, medical studies and, all this other kind of stuff. So, I mean, it's, the direction of what you're saying is exactly what I think it helps people. And for me, it gives hope for the future.
Yeah, well, that's true. That is, but because I think what would be far more problematic and dystopian is if the bro scientists were like treated like outlaws, and if you
aren't they already?
Well, I think what happens is people perhaps initially, but then when we look at the results, and it's very hard to argue with results. This is why one of my favorite things to say is post physique, and people hate that, and
Yeah,
they're like, what does that have to do with anything? And I'm like,
it has to do with everything.
If you don't have the discipline and knowledge to get your body into an optimal functional state, why would I listen to anything coming out of your mouth? Because what that means is that you don't take reality seriously enough to make sure you can operate in it the most effective way possible. So I cannot take anything seriously that you say. And you might be right. Broken clocks are right twice a day. That doesn't mean you start using them to tell time every now and then. No, you don't. That's not how it goes. And that's why I love post physique. It pisses people off, but the guys who get it, get it.
Yeah, I think it's great because, it's exactly like you say. You don't go to a doctor a dentist with fucked up teeth.
Right. You'd be like, whoa, what the hell, man?
Yeah. You're like walking in the dentist office, they got all kind of screwed up teeth. You're like, no, man, this is not what I want. And so it's absurd that when we have to interact with the healthcare system, that you have these people who are obese, who are doctors and nurses trying to teach you about health. And it's not to say they don't know in theory, although it turns out they don't know in theory.
They don't, right?
Right? Like, it's not to say that necessarily they're wrong, to your point, but I think it's a big tell. And what I've actually extended the aesthetics further, which is it's post physique for anything, right? Yep. Like if you look at people in technology that are the big tech companies, their physical aesthetic is deformed. Yeah. So then how can they, like Facebook or Twitter or whomever, they have these policies on what is permitted or not on their platforms, but the actual people behind it don't look like aspirational people. And so then I always just kind of wonder, it's like, well, it's not just that their advice about health is probably wrong, but their understanding of philosophy, of spirituality, of brotherhood, of all those things which make the human experience what it is. It's not really a thing. And what I think is so great is that it's so easy for you to just be like post physique. And the reason why I think it drives them crazy is because of that asymmetry. It's really goddamn hard to learn how to fight, to get in a good shape, to go in, day out for the gym, right? Nobody likes going to the gym, but you got to do it. You got to have that consistency. You got to have the discipline. And when you say it's just two words, post physique, and it's like you've called into question the last 10, 20 years of their life.
Yep. It's a really valid measurement. And look, maybe somebody will hear this and think it's some meathead shit, but like that means you're missing the link here. We operate in a physical four-dimensional universe, and I say four because you normally I'd say three, but four is relevant here to make that distinction. I mean, our inclusion of time, because like you said, we're looking at the results of. You can't just go, oh, let me look this up. Like, no, no, no. What have you been doing? What is your approach to the most important thing, your body? Because if you let this go to shit, you got a whole host of other problems on your hand. You know what's that old saying? You know, a rich man has many wishes, a sick man has one, and that is spot on. When you realize how chronic disease is going, ravage you, go. Let me get in shape. Let me take care of myself. Let me be disciplined. Okay, and then that applies to other things. I'm sure it's no. In fact, I tell people this, and it's 100% true. I have an article on my site, How to Get Better at Math. And I pulled up my high school transcripts to write this. I ordered them just to show how bad I was at math in high school. And I was like, oh, I was worse than I thought. And I thought I was bad. That gave me a fixed mindset and all that junk. But the thing that changed that was fighting and seeing myself improve and learn to fight. And I said, when it was time to go back to school, I said, if I did this with my body, if I went because I started fighting late, I wasn't like a gifted fighter out of the jump. I had to learn, and it was a steep learning curve because I was 22. But I picked it up, and I said, if I did this with boxing, why can't I do it with my mind? Right. And that confidence came from results. Competence. There's nothing that makes you more competent than results, and that's one of the best places to have them.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people get confused here because I think they believe that confidence comes before results. Right. And it's kind of like you don't just walk into a fighting gym one day and be like, I'm a boxer. Right. You don't walk into a regular gym and say, I'm a power lifter. It's, you go every single day for like 5 years. You do the actions, you see the results, and then the identity follows. Right. And in the military, in the history of literature, when we talk about war, a lot of people will say, who are lay people, oh, courage precedes action. That guy was brave because he ran, over the trench and towards the enemy. But that's false. That guy ran towards the enemy, and because of that, he has courage. Right. Yep. And that's an extreme example, but it's present throughout all of human literature, and it applies in our own lives where when we start taking those actions, I think it was you who actually was the first person who wrote, or that I thought, the heaviest weight
to act your way. Yeah. That and it's easier to act yourself into a new way of thinking than it is to think yourself into a new way of acting.
That's it. Yeah.
You commit the action enough times and your mind changes. It has to. And on top of that, let's just take the inverse of the situation. Let's say somehow you're the most skilled guy, but you have no confidence. That's not going to change your ability. It might make you a little apprehensive when it comes time to pull the trigger, but even that is likely not going to be the case because you understand it's part of your skill set what you have to do to be successful. That's how you get that skill set. And we take all that, and it comes back to the idea you have to do the things first. If you do the things first, but doing it, man, we don't want to hurt. People don't like hurting.
Nobody wants to look stupid. Ed, how many times in your life have you tried something new and looked stupid? Right? You have this preternatural ability. That's what I want. That's what I want people to see. Like, I look like a freaking moron every time I try something new, and it's like, yeah, you gotta. What I think I have this saying myself. First of all, I really like that one about action. And I loved, of course, yours. The heaviest weight in the gym is the front door, because that's also true. The one I like here is you have to try to be bad, and you have to be bad to be good, and you have to be good to be great. So if you want to be great, you have to try. And you have to give yourself permission when you try that you're actually going to be bad. And being bad is part of the phases that you have to go through. And so it's almost like, okay, it's a rite of passage. My friends and family are going to make fun of me. I'm starting a podcast, or,
Yeah.
I'm going to learn chess, right? Even though, it's not something I did before in my life, or whatever it is, I'm going to try internet marketing or that kind of thing. So, yeah.
That's how it is. My friends, there were jokes about my social media and self-publishing. Fun. I mean, all poking fun and nice. Now it's like this
Bro, how
guy.
do I do that? That's what it
Yeah,
is.
like, well, 10 years, 10 years of learning and figuring it out and bumping into the wall and just gaining that experience and now I think, and this is maybe off topic, maybe not. One of the best parts about all of this is that I have no, I guess abundance mindset is what you call it, because if somehow I was stripped down to no assets, all my social media got blocked. I still had all my knowledge, right? But all assets and everything was taken away. I could build myself to a reasonably nice, comfortable life in probably about a year, maybe two. Uh, Figure out how to get jobs and reach out to people, and the writing ability and the skills and the SEO knowledge and the algorithms, and that you can't take that away. What is in here and how I think about and see these things. So,
Right.
but we only get that by doing a bunch of it.
That's right. Yeah. That's the participatory knowledge is the only knowledge that's valuable in the internet. And
Yep.
sort of the inverse of that is the example of the lottery winners. So a lot of people that win the lottery end up just as broke as when they started, because it is their habits and the way that they conceive of themselves and money that made
Yep.
them at whatever level that they were at. And so even if you add in millions and millions of dollars over a long enough time, the decisions, they sort of balance out, they weigh into whatever they're going to be, which is both a good thing and a bad thing, right? It's a bad thing for the lottery winner, but it's a good thing for you and for anyone listening, because they can make those decisions today that 10 years from now are going to pay off. To your point about, well, Ed, how do I start an online business? I made fun of you back in 2014 when you were 2 years into this thing. You're like, yeah, man, you got to write. This is how I did it. I have all these courses. You got to get all that scar tissue. You got to learn all these things. You got to try and see what goes for you. Okay. So you have been around for a long time. I'm going to bring it back to the information environment. And so you've seen an evolution, I think, on Twitter and in the world. Like, there has been an evolution online in sort of what people consider authentic, right? So if the institution removes the link between authority and responsibility, right? So the people who are coming up with the policies are not subject to the policies, right? You have fat doctors, you have dentists with bad teeth. What we're seeing on the internet with influencers like yourself is you are embodied, right? You are a force to be reckoned with physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, right? The authenticity is lining up with the responsibility that you've taken on. Do you see this as the continued evolution, right? So like bro science is becoming more legitimate, and it's because of the results. This is why I have hope, by the way, is because I personally think that through time, because it's very hard to fake all of this stuff over a long enough period of time. It's like most fakers get found out, and like the internet will turn on somebody in a dime.
Oh, it's bad. I've seen it.
Inauthentic. So do you
Yep.
think over time this is actually, like, it's scary because we have all this information and everything's broken, but at the same time I feel really good about it, because it's like there's one Ed Latimore today, but like with what you're doing, there'll be 50 in 5 years, right? And maybe 500 in 10 years. And just because that's what's happening. And so like that to me that's a good trajectory. Have you seen that as well? Or?
Here's what I've seen. I have seen it become a lot harder to fake it. That is the biggest, and look, not only has it become harder to fake it in any way, shape, or form, it's you're starting to be rewarded for being real, right? I think that's really what's starting to come about. Those two traits combined have flushed out a lot of people who saw space as an easy dollar, who saw social media as kind of an easy dollar. You see this on the internet a lot too. I mean, there are people who just completely disappeared, and I'm like, what happened? They're just gone. I have no idea what they're up to now. I know what they're not up to, which is this whole space on the internet. And it's cool because this is where all the people are, right? So as there's an evolution, if you want to be a real dude, you got to show real results at some point. People are, I think we are really beyond taking people's word for it. Now, with that said, uh, build a better mousetrap. The scammers are getting more clever and coming up with different ways to project a certain lifestyle or a certain level of influence. But you know what ends up happening is that as all the real people grow, we talk, man.
Yeah, yeah,
That like we talk, and it is very. I don't use this side of the network very often because I'm so zoned in and really, you pick people off and they don't really get past the first layer of security. But every now and then, like I ask and I go, look, man, this guy's saying this, that, or the other. I know you got some people in your network or whatever. Can you verify this claim? And you can do it in any industry, any industry. Uh, there's somebody that's going to speak off the record because if you've done a good job building up yourself as that guy, authentic, and you've shown that you're not that guy that's going to run off at the mouth, people know people who know people, and it's very easy to verify. Because of that, even just a passive effect of who co-signs you and who doesn't, kind of by retweeting and working with your stuff, it's really flushed out a lot of low quality people, and the people who didn't want to be flushed out, they had to change their approach. They had to
yeah,
because it's not matching up. There's this great I don't know how big of a fan you are of rap, but there's this great lyric by Young Jeezy in this song. When this one's for you, he goes selling fake shit, messing up the street stock, right? And he goes, if you'd have had it like that, oh yeah, what do you say? I got it, yeah. Half of these guys telling lies and they sound true. If you had it like that, I would have found you. Like at some
yeah,
point, at some point, it's like if you're even half of what you say, you would have come across my radar organically. The fact
yeah,
that you cold reach and making these claims, that tells me a lot. And then the first thing I do, man, I go to Google. It's very, if somebody says this somebody and I want to see what they are, I go see what's being written about them. I don't want to see what they have written. Not interested in that.
yeah,
I want to see what other people are saying, where they show up in other links. In other words, what I do is I apply the test that I know people apply to me. I apply to everything else, and I take pride in being able to pass that test.
yeah. But
And
you
I'm
also
not even
don't,
selling anything really.
yeah, but you also don't get bombed by Wikipedia, right? So there is that, what sources are you looking at? Because there's a lot of
Well,
legitimate people who did Wikipedia does them dirty.
sure, but forget Wikipedia, right? If you look me up, you're going to see all these other features that have taken my opinion on everything from boxing to sobriety, right? Where I'm talking about getting sober and all that stuff. You'll see interviews where I've talked about social media. People from me or write-ups. I exist independent of what I've put out, in other words, because there's two types of content about anybody. It's what people are saying and what you say. And if the first thing that comes up is what you say, and that's the only thing, I get skeptical.
Yeah,
It would be like me talking in boxing. It's always been this way, right? Guys would try and come around and say they got this, that, or the other, can do this, that, or the other. Well, there's two quick tests to tell. First, well, three really. First, with the internet now, it wasn't always like this. We just go to BoxRec. BoxRec is the official. If you're rating, if your fight is not on BoxRec, it did not happen. Okay, and they record authorized and unauthorized too. But if you tell me there was a guy trying to tell us he had like 20 fights one day around here in the local gym, and we was like, word. Well, let's go look them up. Okay, let's pretend we didn't have that tool. All the coaches talk. So all the coaches are connected. We just go and ask the coaches what they know about this guy. And let's say we don't want to do that. We're not connected. We're isolated. But the guy in the gym knows what he's talking about. Get in the ring. We'll see what you can do. Get in the ring and then one round of sparring. We'll know how good you are. Are you experienced? And then we'll see. So that's three things I took from the boxing world, from the real world, that I apply to brick and mortar. And I'll tell you what, man, some of the people that have failed this test have really broken my heart. But I'm really important. I'm really diligent because I have to remember I don't fail this test. Okay, so anybody who sees me co-sign somebody, they're going to think that person's true. So I got to be very careful of who I say, who I sign, who I vouch for. And if they don't pass that test, man, sometimes I gotta be like, man, we cannot work together. And it's not a positive and negative. It just is what it is because there's too much risk, too much unknown. Because I've taken away all the risk for you. So that's what do I get? There ain't no risk. You're bringing a lot of risk back into my sphere. At what's the cost? Well, let's see. I got to minimize my risk. I got to do my research. Or I got to see, are you who they say you are? And who they or are you who you say you are by their assessment? And without that, that's the end all. That's the best way, by the way. Them scammers, man, they'll reach out to you on Instagram trying to grow your Instagram. I'm like, let's get on a Zoom call so I can see your face. Make sure that's the same person that's messaging me. I'm like, no, it's against company policy. I'm like, oh, I got you.
That's awesome. No, I love all that, right? It's like there's a record. This is like kind of cool. It's in a lot of ways, it's the sort of the rating system. So there was actually a Black Mirror episode about it, but it's like the Uberification of everybody, right? So in your case, you're like, okay, you say you've done 20 fights. Let's look it up on BoxRank. Easy. Mm-hmm. Why would you do that? And then why would you lie about it, right? Because it's like takes you 2 seconds to do that. And then it's the highly asymmetry. So on the internet, you can generate a lot of information, but it's very difficult to generate that social graph of coaches, like what you said. So it's like people who are in the area, they kind of know what's going on because, like you said, everybody talks, and even if they're not like the front man, they know, right? So this idea of we can talk to the coaches. I mean, that's incredibly asymmetric in terms of the somebody who's trying to lie or scam their way in. And then finally, it's great. It is true, right? It was even in the Matrix, right? The best way to know someone is to fight them. It's like, let's go and put you in the real world, whatever that is, and see what the results are, right? So this is why
every now and then it's happened. I got you see every now and then a guy he won't make the claims, but no one can vouch for him. But he shows up and he's got skills, and it's like and then the question goes, where'd you learn to fight? And then you know where to look because it's happening. A guy comes from another country. This is back before the internet, right? And you couldn't just. It was much more difficult to verify a story. But he shows up in the gym, and it's how I started fighting. Yeah, in 2010, guy comes through, and he could fight. He knew what he was doing in there. He was comfortable from experience. Because the cool thing about fighting is you only learn how to do the things by experience. There's just little subtle things and how to position your body to take the sting off a punch and what you only learn that by repeated successful experience at that. So
and it's the same everywhere. I did Muay Thai for a few years recreationally, and we used to spar, and it was one of the best things I ever did. So obviously I didn't do it anything like what you guys do and all the fighters do, but like it gives you a sense of who you are, and you're absolutely correct. Like from a body awareness or proprioception or whatever basis. And then you can see other people, even the way they walk. So even with my tiny limited experience, I can see in the real world, like, oh, this guy probably has fight experience. So you don't fight. By the way, people, don't get into street fights. It's not a fight. It's violence. You don't want to do it. Just run away. So,
yeah, I'll live to fight another day. I'm terrified of getting into a street fight, not because of anything that's going to happen to me. I mean, yeah, I guess now I have to worry about it because there's a kid coming and I got to be there for him. But I don't like worry about that because I don't live that kind of life where that's even remotely a possibility. But people carry guns, man, like the way you carry a water bottle now, and then on top of that, like if I hit you with everything I know, and I'm not a big heavyweight, but I'm not a small man. I'm 6'1". I was 222 this morning, but that's like lean and strong. If I hit you with a right cross and I know how to throw that punch, you're definitely going down. Now, whether you get hit, you hit your head when you fall, that's a different thing. I'm not trying to have that problem. I'm not going to take an ass kicking. I'm past the. But I'm going to do everything I can to make you stop breathing temporarily, which means hitting you in the solar plexus, breaking your ribs, jacking your testicles up like something. But what I won't do is remove your consciousness so you fall and hit the ground.
Yeah.
Unless you got a gun. Man, I saw this crazy video where this dude pulled a gun on somebody in a Walmart parking lot. And he was super reckless, but the guy he pulled the gun on hit a 1-2 piece and knocked him out cold before he had a chance.
You're dead. Wow. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Well, Ed, that's the end of the time that I allotted for today's episode. I really appreciate you coming on and talking to us. I thought it was a really good, informative conversation on the information environment. And I wanted to say thank you and, give you the last word if you wanted to plug something or whatever. But thank you again.
Nothing to plug but my newsletter. Just go to edlatimore.com/newsletter is right there. I'll check out the articles. And in general, man, thanks for reaching out. And speaking of website, dropping some website game with me and that I didn't have. And I'm going to take advantage and use it to continue to grow my reach.
Awesome. Thank you, Ed. Bye-bye.
Hey, thank you.